Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Decaturish Download, a weekly web show featuring all the latest news from Decaturish.com and interviews with local newsmakers. I'm your host, editor, and founder, Dan Wisenhunt, and I'm joined tonight by my co host, assistant editor, Zoe Seiler. Zoe, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Cannot complain. Great to be here. Decaturish DL airs every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. on our Facebook and YouTube channels and is available to listen later via the Apid Media Podcast Network. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Gynecology and Obstetrics of DeKalb County. We'll learn more about them just a little bit later. Tonight, I would like to introduce you to my guest. Some of you know her as LCJ. We know her as DeKalb County CEO, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. CEO, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, how are you this evening?
I am good, Dan, and it feels good to be here with you and Zoe.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, if you're watching us online, you can ask questions. You can throw those in the chat. We'll have some of our own questions as well. A couple of housekeeping notes for everybody. Our fall fundraiser recently exceeded its $40,000 goal. We got a $19,000 match. We're trying to get that up to $78,000, y'all. So visit supportyourlocalnews.com this evening and check that out and give us a little support. Also, Decaturish Inc. comes out next week, and this is an 80-page edition, y'all. It's got quite a bit of content in there. It's got a directory of all of our best of Decaturish winners. Really, one of the best issues we've done all year. Look for it on your local news racks and home delivery if you get it at home. And with that, Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson is wrapping up her first year here as the leader of DeKalb County. And I say commissioner. Excuse me. I'm so used to calling you commissioner, but you're the CEO now. So I have to get used to calling you that, even though you've been CEO for a year.
It's
CEO,
okay.
Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, tell us about your first year and how that's gone.
Well, let me say that it has been a journey. I am very excited because we've kicked the can down the road on a lot of really important issues. And I want to say that I had a lot of important issues when I walked through the door. And I want to be very honest because, I come from 20 years in mass media and communication. So I respect you and Zoe in a different way because of what I've done. But I sort of saved you for last, Dan, because, when I got there, there were so many issues to deal with that I had to decide whether I wanted to be the story or if I wanted to be the CEO and just focus on fixing many of the issues that were in front of me.
So, first question from our team tonight. DeKalb County staff has made the argument that data centers are going to be built with or without these regulations, and that these regulations are intended to protect DeKalb County. Do you believe that the county can't ban data centers outright? And also, why are all of these proposed data centers in South DeKalb?
Well, I think there's a few things here. And I do believe to say that we do not have the ability to control the development of data centers is not correct. Just to sort of put all that into context, because I want to be clear to anyone that's listening, I came here to represent people and not fight them because I live in the same community. And although data centers are on the forefront for us, data centers started in 1942 and they have evolved. They've come a long way since that time. DeKalb County received its first inquiry in 2024, and that was before I took office. And currently it has its first application with several other inquiries from people. However, after the first application was made, it was decided that before we move forward, we needed to put some guardrails around data centers because of concern and also to ensure best practices. So with that being said, we've done a lot of work there. And oftentimes when zoning is by right, meaning if the particular business fits within the zoning, it doesn't require a SLUP, which is a special land use permit. However, with the legislation that's being proposed, the new ordinances, it would require that every data center would have to receive a SLUP. And in doing so, it would require them to meet certain standards. There are concerns about placing data centers in communities. So what we've done is create parameters through planning and sustainability, looking at best practices, where literally you're limited to 4 different zones if they move forward, and that's for office, industrial, and uh, industrial medium, also heavy industrial and light industrial areas. So that's your M2, your OD, and your OI. So we're taking them away from communities if they move forward, and I do say if, and also the buffers. I listen real carefully to the community because as the CEO, I don't vote. However, I want to make sure that when we sit with planning and sustainability, they've been heard. Currently, there's the current ordinance indicates a 500-foot buffer, but most folks in the community have said we'd want to see 1,200. Also, most folks in the community have said, by and large, we're not completely against data centers. We're against mega data centers. And data centers within our ordinance currently is described in 4 different categories. And your mega data centers are 500 square feet or more. So I could walk it all the way down in terms of, best practices that are being considered and presented within the ordinance. But I don't want anyone who hears this conversation to believe that we cannot control development within DeKalb County.
But why South DeKalb? Why are these being proposed for South DeKalb?
And let me say, I think there's a few reasons. For one, it comes down to the availability of land, and in particular, large land and the cost of land. And, as we talk, I want to be, forthright in saying in South and unincorporated DeKalb, that's where you're going to find your cheapest acreage. Now, I remember being a journalist like you back in around 2017, 18, and an article appeared in, I think it was the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal, and it said, "This doesn't happen by chance." And it looked at property values and the difference between North and South DeKalb. And that was pre-commissioner or CEO, but at that time I was a resident. And it looked at our property values. And in the South, in Central DeKalb, traditionally the property values have been lower. Also, that's where you find the greatest abundance of open land. So I believe it's not necessarily because I want to take the pink elephant out of the corner. I don't think it's about race. I think it's about convenience and location. And you are finding the abundance of land there. So I do want to state that for the record. I think it's convenience, I think it's cost, and it's land availability. And I think those are the things that's steering the applications. Currently in the state of Georgia, depending on where you look, it shows there's between 160 and 193 or so data centers. And the vast majority of those are concentrated within the city of Atlanta. So for us, this is the first application. If you move out towards Social Circle, it's sort of becoming the hub of data centers, on the east side, which is far east to even DeKalb County. But yeah, I do believe that the application has surfaced because of land availability and cost.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, how often do you come across just 95 acres of undeveloped land in DeKalb County?
Yeah, and I do want to say, Zoe, that does make DeKalb very rich, and that's why I feel DeKalb is the place to watch. All we have to do is get some things right, because when it comes to Gwinnett and Cobb and the city of Atlanta and certain parts of Fulton, they don't have the available land that we do. So even when it comes to housing development and so forth, we're in a unique position. So I don't want people to feel that it's a dump on DeKalb. I think it's just finding land that is available. And also because of our price point, it does make it desirable to these potential builders.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And I just want to remind our readers out there as well that the county commission they're still talking about data centers. The Ellenwood application is coming up again on January 13th for a discussion and possible vote. And then the ordinance is coming up on January 27th. So both those meetings start at 9 a.m. They're open to the public. So just if anybody wants to attend, that's when those votes are happening. But speaking of the regulations, I have heard and seen many of the residents who have, I mean, there's probably easily been over 100 people at each meeting when they've talked about data centers, but, and I've heard some of their concerns and their opposition, but I guess for you guys, like what would be the downside of not regulating data centers? Like if the zoning code stayed the same, like what would happen?
Well, honestly, it can't. If we want to be good stewards, we have to put guardrails. So there's no good outcome for not being responsible, so to speak. I think requiring a SLUP for every applicant is in order. I do believe ensuring if they move forward that there is a strong buffer. And also I want to say, because I do all this reading, and actually last week I went to the Hoover Institute and I sat with about 40 other elected officials from across the US. And when I'm there, I was in the middle of Silicon Valley. So it gave me an opportunity to listen, to learn, and better understand. Because we actually toured, we saw data centers and so forth. And, you know, depending upon how they're handled, there has been a lot of evolution, but I do understand, and that's one thing that I want to say, the concern from the community, because if you simply use AI and you Google, it will give you pros and cons, and certainly they are there. You know, there's a lot of concern about the power grid and the use of power. Power and water are the two big things that you're going to talk about. But previously, you know, there were concerns with the release of emissions and so forth, but that has evolved over the years. I pointed out during my town hall that between Atlantic Station and the Fox Theater, there are a total of 5 data centers, and you don't know they're there unless you walk in or you know what goes on in the building. So, and they're regulated by 7 different agencies that are completely independent of DeKalb County, everything from the EPA to the EPD, the PSC, the Department of Natural Resources, and it just goes on and on. So the need to regulate has clearly been established. Whether or not we move them forward, I do have concern because I'm watching this, and I do believe that, you know, there's been some double talk as it relates to, you know, the ability of the governing authority to govern. And I just want to be clear that the governing authority still has the power in terms of the vote of the 7 commissioners.
Before we jump off this topic and get to a reader question, I do want to address one reader question real quick. Is there any benefit to the county of having data centers? Is there any upside to it?
Well, let me say yes, from a financial standpoint. I believe down in Walton County since 2022, they've generated over $12 million, according to the last data that I saw. And also in areas where there is a need for economic development, where there's TADs, tax allocation districts, where if a data center would be developed, we capture tax revenue and save it directly for specific investments into that area. It could be very lucrative and helpful towards economic development and community revitalization. Because sitting where I sit in certain areas, particularly along Memorial Drive, along Candler Road, Columbia, those areas are in need of revitalization. And many of the businesses that are there plain and simply don't have the money to address their facades. So you could create a pot of money that would be available potentially, and this is just how I think through the process, where we could issue grants to existing businesses, because new businesses don't want to come into a community and locate next to a business that is not in the best repair, if you know that makes sense. So when it comes to the creation of jobs, I think on average, even if you have what is considered a major campus, which is a 500 square foot or 5,000 square foot or more data center, you're not creating a ton of jobs. About 25 to 70 jobs is the max. But the income revenue from taxation is where you would see the biggest benefit that could be used for community development.
Arthur Harris has been waiting patiently to have his question asked, and I think it's a very good question. He says, does DeKalb County do residential street sweeping?
We do. And there is a street sweeping schedule. And feel free, I'm responsive. I do truly try to respond to everyone as expeditiously as possible. And I'm happy to announce at the top of the year, we'll have a new website, and all of those things will be at your fingertips. So if you'll reach out, but what I do want to say to the resident is that we don't sweep all streets. So I would want to know from asking that question where, the resident lives, because their street is not a part of our street sweeping cycle.
Somebody's typing. It's showing up on the feed. Thank you for your response to that question. I want to talk about public safety because you hit the ground running on this hard day one, and I know you campaigned on it a lot. I know you heard from a lot of people when you ran for CEO about the need for increased public safety. So to quickly recap what you've done, you've increased police pay and benefits. You've also given the department more latitude to conduct chases of suspects. Do you feel your strategy is working?
It is. And you're right. When you look at where we are, the number one encumbrance to our future is public safety and economic development. Those are two things, as well as infrastructure. Those three things are all equally important. And when I came through the door, I was painfully aware that there's some parts of DeKalb where, Dan, the crime score is so high. We have businesses, hardworking folks who plain and simply can't get premise liability insurance because it is being denied because of the likelihood, literally, that insurance will be used. And imagine that. Don't want to give you insurance because you just might use it. But nonetheless, getting down the crime scores and making people feel safe was really important. And also, I was painfully aware that over the past 4 years, we've lost 385 officers. So you had officers that were doing increasingly more. Also, I walked into a situation where officers were being paid triple overtime. And I want that to sit with you. Most folks have heard of overtime, but triple overtime because of the shortage. And when I looked at the numbers I just took issue with that because I don't think a person should have to work around the clock to earn a decent wage. And our salaries just weren't in line with the metro area. And the truth of the matter is we were competing with Dunwoody, we're competing with Brookhaven, Sandy Springs, and they had the highest paid officers. So what I did immediately was restructure $10.2 million that had been utilized for triple overtime and invested it in salaries, starting our officers at $64,000 without college degree, with college degree $73,000, and I gave a 7.1% pay increase to all existing officers, and that put our officers amongst the top 3 in terms of pay in the region for their salaries. The second thing I did was put aside $2 million for the real-time crime center because technology, the future of crime is deeply rooted in technology. Drones, dispatching, and even when it comes to the street racing that we've been dealing with. People disperse quickly, and having the ability to capture license plates and get imagery so that you're able to identify perpetrators was really important. So rolled out also the real-time crime center. And actually, I don't know when people will see this, but we actually cut ribbon tomorrow. I was there just today. And it also allows us to link with other surrounding jurisdictions because the city of Atlanta, Sandy Springs, your Brookhaven, Dunwoody, they all have Cobb, Gwinnett, real-time crime centers, and DeKalb didn't. So we weren't fighting crime smart. And I can say that just 2 weeks ago, it paid off, because with our investment of actually 18.9 million in over 300 flock cameras and drones, we were able to use our remote technology on repeated car dumping sites. And we were able to identify the perpetrators, and now we have warrants out there for them. And I want to say that these perpetrators combined have dumped more than 37,000 tires in DeKalb County that's costing taxpayers. And, so this technology is already helping us tremendously. And also, if a chase goes from one jurisdiction to another, or let me use the word pursuit, it allows us to continue. Because you guys probably saw down in the city of Atlanta where the gentleman had gone into the hospital, came out, and they literally followed him using remote technology. So we're really excited about what it can do. Also, we invested another 8 million in E911, because when I got here, when I sat with all my mayors on the top end and such, and they said, well, Chatcom's working good. And I said, well, what does Chatcom do? So I told people to go figure it out and bring me the cliff notes. And that's when we realized Chatcom is a real-time communication system that all officers can hear. And it allows them to even see in real time, what may be taking place, and it helps the officers. So we put another 8 million there. And, I could go into call response times, but our call response times are up. We've increased applications more than 300%. Our classes have increased also by over 100% in terms of, new officers. And, starting next year, because police training is a 26-week program. And in January, I can say that this is my first class. And our classes now have the highest number of enrollees, and we are getting a lot of officers back that we've had in more than 10 years.
We are flying through our questions tonight. Z, you're up. I know you wanted to clarify something about data centers, and you had another question. Then we're going to get to a reader question.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, just to clarify, just the square footage, I think the data center campuses would be 500,000 square feet or more. So I just want to make sure we were all.
No. Actually, for the record, there's 4 different categories if you apply. 500,000 or more is considered a campus. That's the largest. But in terms of if you are submitting an application, and we would require, if you are, the least you can develop, the smallest is called a minor, and that's 20,000 square feet. Next is considered medium, and the medium goes from 21,000 basically up to 99,000. Then the third category is called the major, and that's from 100,000 to 499,000. And then you have what's considered a campus, and that's 500,000 or more.
Yes. For sure. I think we just forgot the 1,000 part earlier and just said 500. So I just want to make sure we were all on the same page there. But yeah,
real-time fact checking brought to you by the team at Decaturish.com.
But I do want to, you answered my question about the real-time crime center. So I do want to look at a reader question just about water and sewer updates. And I had a question as well. I know you guys, it was one of the very first things that you had to tackle coming into office. And y'all talked a lot about the customer advocate office, and I know you're working with the Urban League. And anyway, I just was wondering if you had just an update on how that's going, and if they are starting to handle disputes and all that good stuff.
Yes, and you guys know too, because we started advertising with you in August. So sometimes it amazes me when folks say, well, when are you going to get the office up and running? But we're currently advertising in 11 different publications, both print and digital. And this is where this becomes interesting. And this is where, the business side of it. To date, And actually, I have, this is from November 30th, 748 applicants. And we are using the HUD standard in terms of what's necessary to qualify. And that starts at a one-person household at 48,000 or less. Okay. And it breaks it out by the amount of individuals within the household. But with that being said, we actively, that office has been operating and will continue to do so, because I want to be very clear. We're not here to be insensitive. In 72 hours after taking office, I was called into by the EPA, EPD, and the Department of Justice. And, as a member of the governing authority, as a commissioner, who sat there as the chair of Public Works and Infrastructure, and boy, I'm getting those items through. Then to walk in and find out, Lorraine, you now need to fund the items that you've approved for the work.
Before we get to our next reader question, I want to talk about our sponsor for this week's episode is Gynecology and Obstetrics of DeKalb County. They are a longtime supporter of Decaturish, an all-female practice providing comprehensive care to women in every stage of life, including general wellness, obstetrics, gynecologic surgery, with locations in Decatur and Stone Mountain. You can find out more at goodobgyn.com. One of our readers, and I got this question a few times before I even sat down for this interview, she wants to know about your thoughts on the I-285 Express Lanes project. That's coming through. That's not a county thing. GDOT, yeah. The GDOT Express Lanes project. There are a lot of residents very concerned about this, very upset about what might happen to their homes, their property values. What can you tell us about that project, and what is the county doing? What can the county do about it?
Now that's that part. In terms of what can the county do about it. It is a Georgia Department of Transportation project. Interesting thing is that top end has amongst the worst traffic in the United States. And, increasingly we are dealing with ways to remediate and calm traffic. So with the top end express project, I would hope that homes aren't and residents aren't being displaced from, the build out. I know that there were, on the occasions that I've asked, several town halls that were held. And I would be hopeful that residents participated in those, because that was the time to really change the course. Because in all honesty, that ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. And I'm not sure how we could go about calling it back, so to speak. But I would urge the caller or the viewer to reach out directly to the office, because I'm certainly, I have a good relationship with Commissioner Murray. I don't mind having the conversation. I don't want to see any residents suffer from an altered quality of life because of the project. Because the project is designed just like, on the east side, we're getting our own spaghetti junction, if you've been over here. And it's nearing completion. And also, it was the science that was used based upon traffic patterns to determine the best course of action. And of course, on the east side, we're wrapping that project up now. By next year, we will be, it will be complete, and the access roads and ramps will be open. So I wish I could say more, but I never want to sit here and manufacture responses because it is a GDOT project. But do write me, email me. I prefer the email with the concerns, and I'll patch in the right people so that I can help you have a conversation.
Madam CEO will respond to your emails, by the way. She is well known for responding to her emails, so I will vouch for that. We're going to ask one more question. I do want to respect your time because I know you're very, very busy, but I want to touch on the issue real quickly, if we could, about homelessness. That's been a big concern in DeKalb County for years, and as we all know, there are changes coming at the federal level to how these programs are funded. How are these changes going to affect DeKalb County?
Let me say I'm very concerned. And honestly, Dan, I'm concerned that I hadn't heard more from our on the federal level about this. Because if you're reading that 2025 plan and you understand, to be honest, we are becoming a society of the haves and the have-nots, because of what we see. In 2021, rental rates increased 20%. In 2022, 16%. So within a 2-year period, you had a 36% increase in rental rates. And people can't afford that. It's not sustainable long term. And it bothers me because it appears we've not learned from New York, California, DC, and many of the other jurisdictions that have already been where we are going, it appears. Because in 2024, I had a study done through Ernst & Young, and they determined that in order for an individual who earned minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit in Metro Atlanta, they would need to work 140 hours a week. And think about that.
I'm going to Google how many hours are in a week because I don't know the answer to that, but that seems like a lot of hours.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm not sure anymore. I believe minimum wage may be $7.25 or so. So, if you sit and run the numbers, it's just not possible. But what I will say that in DeKalb, what we've done, you may be familiar with our $8 million into the Park 500 project. And I'm excited about that because DeKalb has started its own portfolio. We had previously, and DeKalb Housing Authority is our partner, but when we talked about solutions, I am not one to believe that I should give you my money to spend it, and then I'm renting from you and I have a timeline. So we decided to go and purchase, invest our own money in the units. And even as we sit here, starting Monday, we have 60 new residents that are moving in. And we took these individuals from our extended stay hotels. So these are primarily single parents with children that we are now providing an opportunity. And there we're also doing wraparound services because it's our intent not to make them eternal renters, but home owners, so that we're able to transition them and help them with employment. We also have invested $1.2 million in our warming centers and 400 beds. So technically now DeKalb County does have its first unhoused shelter. And am I proud of that? No. But is it necessary? It is. Because what we're seeing is heartbreaking and it's necessary. Also, it's not just enough to place people in a bed. Behavioral health, oftentimes when it comes to our unhoused population, you find that there is either a mental illness or a drug dependency. Because at any given time, we have been sheltering through our partners, and we still have those, around 600 to 700 people that are unhoused, that are in need, and we will provide. And, increasingly that's difficult because we're not seeing the trickle down effect from the federal level for human services, if you will, which compounds the issue. During the previous administration, DeKalb County received $275 million that could be used towards food distributions, homeless, but now that money isn't there. So what you're seeing from us, we have to be extremely fiscally conservative and determine really where our priorities lie, because we can't invest in everything that we have. And I think also when you talk about the unhoused and homeless, the legacy residents, you can't leave them out because those are often your older, most vulnerable people in those communities that you see transitioning. And with that, I want anyone that's listening, if you know a senior and their income level has not changed, but they have received a tax bill that increases liability, to reach out to our office or contact our tax commissioner. and you can freeze your taxes. But it does require that you're either a senior or disabled. There's also some income caps on it, but that liability will freeze until which time your home transfers to a second party. So that's important. And also to note that, we don't want anyone unhoused. DeKalb County had $13 million at last year that came in, and now we're down to 5 to help with rental assistance. So, sometimes I know it can be difficult, but don't wait until the 11th hour. If you're having problems, reach out to us because we don't want you to be unhoused. We want to help you.
I appreciate Madam CEO. We are a little over her time, so I want to make sure that we are respectful of her time. Thank you so much for joining us. These are important topics. We're going to stick a pin in it right there. We hope you'll join us again sometime.
Yes, I mean, honestly, I had so much to talk about. So you'll have to have me back again.
We'll do a part 2 of this interview. This is the Decaturish download. Decatur's home for nuanced hot takes and level-headed commentary. My name is Dan Wisenhunt. I'm the editor and founder of Decaturish, joined by my assistant editor, Zoe Seiler. This is the last episode of the Decaturish download for 2025. We're going to take a couple of weeks off, enjoy the holidays with our family. We hope you do that as well. And we'll see you right back here in 2026. We'll figure out the guest to be determined. Maybe LCJ will be our first guest of 2026. Who knows? If she's available, we'll get her on the calendar. With that, we hope everyone have a safe holiday. Please, for the love of God, don't drink and drive. There's no need to do all that. Stay safe. Stay indoors if you can. Spend time with your family and enjoy it. And we will see you all again in 2026. Have a great evening, everybody.